Walking down a side street from the bus stop or bus station that I'm going to leave tomorrow that I checked out just now are these excavations. I have no idea what they are of. Could be a church, could be who knows what, but the tower is interesting. I think this is just a pretty wall of graffiti, I think, painted on that wall of tiles. I could be wrong. Here, a very narrow old street. Some of the walls supported by these metal braces. Who knows what, if anything's going to happen to this neighborhood. But it's in the direction of the old town, for whatever that's worth. And this part up here is pretty new looking, so maybe this is the beginning of the new town, of the old town, right? Santa Cruz Church, I think it is, and that cafe restaurant. So I'll go down here a ways and hang a left up through the Arco. Interesting little building I don't think I shot yesterday. Quite a little bit of tile applique, it looks like. Different, very, well, no, it's partly tile. Probably all tile, but just not all squares. It's the first time I've seen that. Here's a building that looks like it missed Salazar's destruction, unless it was built new by someone else. The mathematics building is to my right, a little bit behind me to my right. This is the site of an earlier castle and the Porto do Sol. This was where there was an entrance to the highest part of the town, and that's what these two balls stand for, is the sun. It's the point where the sun, it can be seen rising. If you're standing here, you look to the right, of course, and through there is the sun rising. That's why it's called that. So I'm standing right at the tip of my fingernail of my little finger, or my index finger, my pointing finger, and I'll walk down here to number 20, where I will see the aqueduct. Began walking, I saw the end of this wall, and this is, I believe, the aqueduct. Not particularly pretty compared to several that I've seen, but probably restored. But a Roman aqueduct is not a bad edifice to have in your town. A rather large one compared to what I've seen, and how to say this, kind of simple in its gross, I should say, large arches. These are big arches, some of them particularly so, like this one's particularly large. Maybe there was and there are several of these to my right. But then as we look further down, maybe where greater height was gained, they're closer together and somewhat narrower to give more strength. This is a pretty pan across the botanical gardens, showing that lovely suspension bridge. And hopefully a waterfront that's being developed. This is a pretty wooden door, or doors I should say, with the carved wooden busts, particularly elegant. The brass plates say Correo or mail, the knockers, and then here these pretty tiles of women for some reason, women. Is there significance in the number of women or what they look like? Here, just a peek inside this house, which was built in 1892, it says. This is a typical Portuguese...
De Coimbra.
De Coimbra.
De Coimbra. This is a typical food Portuguese and typical here. Born here.
Ah, in Coimbra. Okay, good. Now this is lamb.
Yes.
And this is probably cabbage.
Yes.
Some kind of thing like that. Okay, good, great. Thank you very much.
The potatoes.
Oh, of course. The meat is very moist and has a light sour taste to it that adds interest to it, not at all hurting it. And this is a mousse mango, which is really a very strong mousse, a mango taste, kind of like a pudding. building, and I'm on the second floor. She says is over 100 years old. And evidence of that is the stairway that I'll show you. This is my room. It's at the top of this convent. This is the decor. Beautiful stairway that they had here. It's a very elegant building. See, it goes down 4 floors. This is my view in the early morning when I do my stretch exercises of this particular room in this very elegant former maternity hospital, if you will. But it gives you an idea of how this building was built several hundred years ago. These doors are a tongue and groove, if you will, closing mechanism. So you get something reasonably airtight, and it probably keeps the door from warping earlier, if at all. These haven't done that. There's the clock tower of the university. But notice how elegantly these doors work. These will fold out to completely shutter from the inside this wall, but this window. But notice how carefully it's done, and the design of this molding is such that it is designed to catch the door on this little lip inside here, and then in the old days it would lock there to hold it securely. And notice also that this molding is a slightly smaller version of this molding, intentionally apparently to create this wainscoting level consistent with the windows wainscoting and somewhat the rest of the room. Here, very old, elegant stove, wood-burning stove. I think that rock that those things are made out of, and they were mostly made out of that, if not all, in addition to the iron, help to heat and hold the heat, and maybe even radiate it. Notice again how electricity, once it came to be, had to be retrofitted in here. Not very elegant by our style, but in fact very elegant and nicely done. Look how well those corners are formed. Kind of ungainly junction boxes, but it's what they needed to use in those days from their viewpoint. And notice each room has its large doors that close. These two walls in this small room reflect the motif of the entire building, and that is these graphics. Very well done. They're not cartoonish, even though they're simplistic in the sense of lines, but they have feeling. They're serious. They feel real in the sense of a real artistic attempt. All the furniture in this new modern hostel is good quality furniture. The beauty of this building is that you can probably get a darn good idea of how the wealthy lived, because they would have designed their buildings the same way, I would think. Maybe not such large hallways, but everything else might well have been the same. I'll take you out into the hallway. It is a beautiful staircase. As beautiful as it is, there must have been some difficult times for some of the women that had to go up and down these. Both the people who cared for the mothers-to-be and the mothers-to-be. Here, the remodeler of this hostel has done a scary thing by putting in this mirror. More than once I've almost walked into it, because it's full height to the ceiling, almost. Until I saw my own reflection and realized that something ugly was me. Okay, now I'm entering what would have been the lobby of the maternity ward, and is the lobby for this hostel. But what's interesting is not the hostel lobby, but the decorations, the murals, the paintings, if you will, that existed here to welcome these women in. And look at the magnificence. the ceiling design. Here, in apparently what is old Portuguese language, were instructions to or advice for or something of that nature for the women. Or perhaps it was even a statement of policy, that sort of thing. But here more graphics. And trying to give an upbeat feel to being here, which hopefully for the majority of women was a good thing. But remember, it was Dr. Semmelweis who I think in the 19th century had discovered over here in Europe that women died in hospitals at a higher rate than they died giving birth in the gutters of Europe, because nobody knew anything about cleanliness and disease. So doctors would put their hands in the morning in the wombs of dead corpses to show their students, blah, 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 and then do the same without even washing their hands for the live women, thus killing them on the spot, so to speak. Notice how the artist of these graphics has used the phrases and so forth that would be recognized by a person who spoke Portuguese as having intellectual value in the form of an owl with what I suspect is that classic hat of graduation for graduates. These streamers that you see are given one each to each incoming student to indicate what their field of study is. At some point in time when they're done, they burn those in a ceremony. They're the Harry Potter type of robes that we've seen already. And as to a hostel, it's very nicely finished off. Notice these beautiful windowed doors. Wouldn't those be elegant in any home that could accommodate them artistically? And are those panels up there of rock, or are they painted? Hard to tell in this country. But this material feels like a tile. It's very smooth. That looks like an edge, but I can't find it. That looks like an edge also, but I can't feel it. And there, I can't feel it. Here we'll look up through these banisters. What a beautiful building. This is when I'm looking good, not with the rest of my paraphernalia. This is kind of the sunlight room, if there were any sun. But notice how they've done a lovely silhouette decor here. But notice the counterpoint between this and the original script that you've seen. This is part of the breakfast. Actually, I'll show it to you, but there are these rolls that have just come out of the oven. They bake them every morning. And the staff in this small kitchen for the guest prepares this breakfast every morning. So you've got cereal, coffee and tea, and probably hot chocolate. Here you have some ham and some cheese. And then there's rolls in here like I just showed you. And then bread, and then the oven there. Here's another view of the cathedral, the old cathedral. That dome is pretty, particularly in the sunlight. Those are, I think, blue tiles up there, and they radiate a little bit more than they do right now. Again, that mix of fortress crenellations and the arches, if you will, of a church. Interesting how they keep adding little tidbits like that quarter tower or something that's wedged in between those two buildings.